Blog Talk Radio.
Live from Washington, D.C., it's Quintessential Listening, Poetry Online Radio. QLPOR, as it's widely known, features a bevy of poets, spoken word artists, and live poetry readings with best-selling authors. Your host is Dr. Michael Anthony Ingram.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the program. My guest today is Kathrine Yets. The title of her new book is iLearn, iTeach. Welcome, Kathrine.
Thank you so much.
Well, I am glad you're with me. I want to know more about iLearn, iTeach. What inspired your book? Let's start with that. What inspired your book?
What inspired my book, the first section is called iLearn, and it's poems about my childhood, as well as kind of coming from a dysfunctional home and not having the care that some, younger children get. And then the I Teach section is about my teaching experience and trying to be that person for those children. So a lot of them came from broken homes. And some of the poems are a bit humorous. Some of them are more focused on like the actual teaching aspect. Others are more focused on the relationship. And I very much miss those students. It was middle school and high school is what it focuses on. Now I teach adults, but before I taught the younger crowd, and it's about that experience mainly.
All right, thank you. Let's go back for a minute. What is poetry? What is poetry?
To me, poetry is play. So I believe poetry is a very playful thing to do, very, very much play. And anyone can play, really. So I believe anyone can do poetry. And just give a student or anyone, any individual, a prompt or a toolbox of poems or poetry devices to use, and they can play and have fun.
All right. Is poetry important?
I'm sorry?
Why is poetry important?
Poetry is important because it implements change. Whether or not the poet intends to or not, they're putting somebody in a different perspective and putting them in a different mindset, which can influence change. And whether that's on a large level or small level, micro or macro, it does make change happen.
All right. What are some of the predominant themes of your book? You kind of mentioned what inspired you. What are some other things that you think of?
Well, much of my inspiration comes from a variety of things. I write about almost everything. I'd say a lot of my poetry is sensual. I do write about animals. I write about ekphrastic poems, which is art off of art, and a lot of I actually did for my my capstone for college. I did ekphrastic poetry, not necessarily like poetry art that you find in the museum, but art from friends and family members.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
And yeah.
Continue. Anything else? Talk to me.
Yes, of course. I find inspiration in nature. I wouldn't call myself a nature poet by any means, but I do feel nature is often inspiring. And as I said, I write a lot of sensual poetry. I write a lot of poetry. My husband is my muse right now. So I've been writing a lot of poetry about him, which actually is going to be my full-length collection coming out next year called Always Only. My first full length it will be, and it's all poems about my husband. So he's a really good news right now.
Okay, very nice. I like that. Please share a poem.
Of course. One moment. I'm just peeking through the book real quick. This is from my first chapbook, and it's titled So I Can Write, and it's published by Cyberwit, which is what my new book is my new chapbook is published by as well. The poem is called T.S. Eliot Naked. I have measured out my life in cigarette drag. I have heard the mermaids sing, each to each. I have danced naked on the beach, nails unfiled, hair on my legs. What is the question, pupils beg? I have seen the red apple rot. I have seen the plant die in its pot. There is no time for this or that. Be more specific, not so flat. What is the answer, they plea? I walk back to the beach, back to the youth, the hibiscus tree with yellow drying leaves. I cannot answer. I cannot see without my glasses. Old, moldy molasses, old, pointy brass branches on the tree. Let's get back to me. But the answer, they say, I have measured out my life in coffee pots. I have leapt through the parking lot of life. What did I see? Tell us, answer us. The answer is each to each, cannot be breached until they hear the mermaids sing upon the beach. Theirs is the song of emeralds, of midnight's coffee grounds, of yesterday's condoms. There is not enough room for us. There's not enough room for me. Caked under my nails is one answer. Balanced on my blame, I walk on without a name.
Kathrine, what is the purpose of that? All right, what is the purpose of that poem? Tell me about the purpose.
It's the purpose of the poem. It's actually inspired by T.S. Eliot, so that's why I called it T.S. Eliot Naked. His poem Proof Rock inspired it. Love Song for J. Alfred Prufrock. Yes. And it's supposed to be a stream of consciousness poem. So it's just kind of whatever comes to mind, back and forth, very just letting the flow go.
All right. How does a poem ordinarily begin for you? With an idea, a form, or an image?
Honestly, I don't know how they come to me. They just kind of I don't know. They just, sometimes it's an image, sometimes I start off with a form and let that inspire me. Not as often as when I just kind of let it out. As I said, my muse right now is my husband. I've had different muses in life, but mainly I would say right now is my husband, and they just kind of come from a moment sometimes.
All right. It's very nice. I can understand that. Let's back again. Mm-hmm. What was an early experience where you learned that poetic language had power?
When I first found my poetic voice, you would say?
Yes.
Well, I was about 3, and I started manipulating nursery rhymes. So I would often play with nursery rhymes like 1, 2, buckle my shoe. And I'll never forget this one experience where 9, 10 to the big bang, so you have to come up with something really funny or fun. So I thought, well, my dad likes fishing, and poo is funny. So I went to the stairs to recite my poem. I went 1, 2. I don't remember what was in between, but I remember the 9, 10, a big bass's turd. and it came out wrong. And my father started yelling at me, and I was like, oh, no, what did I do wrong? And I thought he was mad about my poem. So I didn't write poetry again until about third grade when I found out what word I had said or what it sounded like. So I dropped it for a very long time. And then I started when I was in third grade writing poems about like Harry Potter and lunch ladies named Duke who made bad soup and things like that. So it's always been with me to some extent.
Okay, sounds like it. From the age of 3. All right.
3, yeah.
You know.
I play with rhymes.
Yes.
I'm going to say my 3-year-old nephew makes up songs now.
Oh, really? Oh, right.
My 3-year-old nephew makes up songs. Yeah, he makes them up on his own, and he loves the Beatles, so it's often to the Beatles tunes, but he'll, like, make it his own.
All right, very nice, very nice, very nice. He learns from his art. All right. All great writers have great writing influences. Who are some of yours, and what makes them great in your eyes?
Of course, I have to mention my mentor in poetry, Margaret Raska. She is a Wisconsin poet. Her poetry is very politically driven, and it's a way that I long to write and cannot always seem to. But through a class of hers, I did end up writing some political poems that I would highly suggest her classes. Christina Norcross is another one. She's another Wisconsin poet. She is a nature poet for sure. And her imagery is fabulous. I'll never forget her line, my lips open and close like a curious fish or something along those lines. It's a very beautiful one. I'm also inspired by there's a lot of Wisconsin poets, Jim Landwehr. He writes really punny stuff. And I can't be humorous in my poetry for the life of me, but that man just gets it. And I'd almost, I dare say I relate him to another funny poet that inspired me a lot, Jack Spicer. He's not always funny, but Jack Spicer can be really funny. He's a classic poet. But my favorite line by Jack Spicer isn't a funny one, though. It's, one only whores towards what causes poetry. And then he also wrote the poem, how does it go? One moment. It's, any fool can get into the ocean, but it takes a goddess to walk out of one. That's the one. And
Deep.
then I also love Hilda Doolittle is another one. She's just, her extended metaphors are amazing.
All right. I want to ask you a question. You and I have communicated prior to setting up this program today. To me, you came across in our emails as a very lighthearted individual. So why can't you write humorous poetry? I mean, you've laughed some today. Why can't you write humorous poetry? I just want to know. Have an inquiring mind.
That is a really interesting question. Let me think for just a moment.
Yes,
so
please.
I guess I used to, when I was very little, that was, well, not very little, when I was in third grade, that was, my jam was humorous poetry. Okay. My whole point of every poem was to make my sister laugh, actually. And, I'd write, like, Harry Potter is my fodder, for what I call I feed, and, like, weird stuff like that. I just write craziness. And then I think I went through a lot of things at an early age in life.
Yes.
And unicorns and rainbows just weren't I wasn't as imaginative, and I wasn't as funny. I was very shy. I was often teased, and it was through a lot of things. And
yes.
I wouldn't say it's made me bitter, but it's made me a little more depressive. And I've been through depression. I have bipolar 1, so I have a lot of depression in my life. And I try to be funny. I even send funny stuff to, like, humor journals, and they just don't get published.
Okay.
So right. I don't think I'm very funny. I'm not getting published in humor journals.
So they're not the end all in terms of judgment.
Oh yeah, I know. I shouldn't base it on my
right.
submissions. You can send to 100 journals and get rejected 100 times,
true.
and you still write.
Right,
you still
that
write
is so
anyway.
true. Right. I say keep writing, whether you send them out or not. Continue to explore that side of you again.
I will try.
All
Play
right.
a little.
Good for me. All right. Take it in small steps. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you shared that with me. I'm glad you shared that. That helps. That helps a lot. All right. Share another poem.
Thank you. All right. Just a moment. Trying to remember which one. These are from, my next set of poems are going to be from my second chapbook, which is called The Animal Within, published by Unsolicited Press. I think it was in 2021. And I'll read the first one. It's a personal favorite. It's based off of James Wright's poem, Blessing.
Mm-hmm.
And in that poem, he goes to see some horses. And it's kind of a sad poem, really. But I don't think the horses took it that way. So I write from the perspective of the horses. I think the horses were happy to see them. So it's called Bless You. And the quote from James Wright that begins it is, "Suddenly I realized that if I stepped out of my body, I would break into blossom. Fenced off from the highway, I gallop in the gleam of the moon, and the eyes of my two guests burst blue at the sight of me. Their steps plash dewdrops as they breathlessly walk towards me. My nerves ripple with excitement as they run their hands through my mane, detangle the wind braids of the day. They lift their heads boldly as sunflowers. There is no bliss like theirs. I nudge one's hand with my muzzle, come him into my home, my pasture, invite him to graze with me under sable skies. His fingertips kiss my ear, as soft as a tired saddle. Suddenly, he freezes in time. His face opens like a lisianthus." And that's all for that one.
You know, I think I'd like you to read that one again. I'm going to imagine that I'm that horse. That I'm that horse that you're talking about. Yes, please read it again.
Of course. Bless you. Fenced off from the highway, I gallop in the gleam of the moon, and the eyes of my two guests burst blue at the sight of me. Their steps plash dewdrops as they walk breathlessly towards me. My nerves ripple with excitement as they run their hands through my mane, detangle the wind braids of the day. They lift their heads boldly as sunflowers. There is no bliss like theirs. I nudge one's hand with my muzzle to welcome him into my home, my pasture, invite him to graze with me under sable skies. His fingertips kiss my ear, as soft as a tired saddle. Suddenly, he freezes in time. His face opens like a lisianthus.
Wow. I like that.
Thank you.
I like that. You know,
personal
Kathrine,
favorite.
It's beautiful. Some poets claim that a poem is like a living creature. Once out there, there's not much you can do to correct or improve it, while others edit meticulously, not leaving much from the original draft form. What is your take on the editing process?
The editing process, oh man, it's a doozy. I often have critiquing workshops. I'm in a lot of different workshops.
Okay.
I was in All Writers for a while, which is based in Waukesha, Wisconsin, and it's run by Kathy Giorgio. Wonderful, wonderful writer. And that's kind of where I got started with workshopping, I would say, minus college. Of course, I workshopped in college as well. That was my first time stepping out and doing it. And I have Rogue One, I have Driftless Poets, I have our Poets Critique, and I get all this great feedback. But if I don't do it and, like, do the editing while edited and helped by others, I just don't do it.
Right.
I'll forget about it, you know? Like, it's not that I don't want to edit it, I just kind of put it on the back burner.
All right.
So, but I believe in editing. I strongly believe in the editing process, and the idea that a poem should just never be touched and left the way it is. I can't agree with that.
All right.
I understand how people might feel that way, but if that's how you feel, I feel like there's a way around that. Okay, here's the way around it. If you don't want to edit the poem, keep the original. As you edit it, keep making copies of it.
Oh, wow, very nice.
I used to do that all the time. All the time. I'd have one poem, and then I'd turn into a whole new poem, and it's one way to get around the never touch the original.
I like that. I like that strategy. So, listeners, you heard what Kathrine said. She gave you a way to get around the editing process. All right, in terms of thinking there's one way or the highway. I like that. Share another poem. I want to hear another poem.
Certainly. I'm trying to think if I should. I think I'll stick with the animal within again. And I'm going to do iLearn, iTeach closer to the end. Let's see. I just had one up. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
I'll read the poem. This poem actually won me the Jade Ring Award. It's a Wisconsin Poets Award, granted by the Wisconsin Writers Association. It's a beautiful ring, and it was actually crafted by Kraft, the guy who does Kraft cheese.
Oh, wow.
He designed the ring, which I think is the funniest thing, crafted by Kraft. All right. So this one's called Plath's Birthday. And I actually wrote it based on the poem Blackberries by Sylvia Plath, and some of the first words are the same. So it was a form poem. Plath's Birthday. Nothing but pumpkins left to write, with ivy swirls curls around my boots, and a cornfield somewhere at the end of it amazing. Pumpkins, big as my head, with star-glistening seeds and guts. I had not asked for such orange, burnt as the ember of my cigarettes. They love me. They wait for picking like girls at a bar or dance. Overhead the crows caw. Theirs was the voice of autumn, of pumpkin ale and cranberry moonshine, bits of last night's ashes in the sky. I come to one patch of pumpkins, so bright it hurts my eyes, thumping their amber bellies and their knotted stems in a haystack. I believe in a kind of heaven with one look, hooked into this moment in October. The only thing to come now is the cornfield between two hills. The wind blows and a stalk slaps me like a playful lover. These hills, these fields, once too green and sweet to know the bitter pumpkin seed. I follow a scarecrow's path to the hill's southern face, and the face is gold that looks out on nothing, nothing but wheat and grass, and the occasional stray cow lowing. And that's what got me my ring.
Wow, that was incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very, very fond of my jade ring.
That's all right. I like it. You know, they say, Kathrine, that to see the world with complete honesty, one should look to comedians, musicians, artists, and poets. What do you think emerges naturally from your work? What emerges from you?
Can you rephrase a little bit what emerges as far as...
Yes. What qualities do you emanate when you write your poetry?
I feel the qualities that I emanate are seeing the world more closely, taking a moment and dissecting it, living the simple life. It's not all the time that my poems are like that, but every once in a while. I'd also say another thing my poetry emits is power. I haven't read a poem like that yet, but I do write poetry that is very empowering. So I guess those who have read it, and I had one that I'm probably going to read later, which I published in Women's Scream Anthology, poems I'm most proud of, called Katy Perry Don't Stop. And it just, I had a woman contacted me and said, I need to use this in my workshop for an example of a power poem that can be broken open. And I was just like, wow, I'm being used in a workshop, you know?
Yes, it's beautiful.
It was so wonderful to hear. And I guess it's just, some people say they read some of my poetry and they just feel empowered. So I feel like it's empowerment.
Wow. You know, you've shared about, again, empowerment as well as political poems. What I want to know from you before we take a quick break, what do you view as being the role of a poet in modern-day society?
As I said earlier, I believe that we help create change, but I also believe we are teachers, whether we're actually teachers or not. We teach concepts. We teach people how to look outside of themselves and not be so inward. So I feel like we definitely, as I said, teach people to step outside of themselves. That's something I try to do so much as a poet, and so much when I'm reading poetry, is to step outside of the self. So we are teachers.
We're teachers. I like that. I want to let that settle in just for a second before we go to break. That we are teachers, and that's why I really love the title of your book, iLearn, iTeach. That really it struck me. It struck me a lot. So I just wanted to share that with you. Well, we'll take a brief break.
Okay.
I'm here with Kathrine Yets, and what better way to spend a Saturday afternoon than listening to Kathrine share her work. So, Kathrine, what I'd like you to do is to share 3 poems with no interruptions from me.
All right. I think that's best if I go with my new chapbook, iLearn, iTeach. I'm going to read a poem from the first section called iLearn, the first poem of the chapbook called During the War, fired by Brittany Sanchez's photography. Spring had left us restless like crocuses in the grass. The sound of airplanes brought us home every night, wrestling through the backyard to a wet porch floodlit by the kitchen window. The sky a washed-out denim, stalling before the stars came. We stumble up the wood steps, and the whoosh above made us cover our ears. We were young, and our eyes rolled up like in death to look. We were young and knew nothing of disaster or a longing for home. We were always home, could smell our stepdad's vodka before it hit the glass. The planes flew just above our roof, so close we thought we could just reach and grab a wing. My next poem is in the same section, and it's called Unlove. One moment, I thought I got to it and it didn't go. Unlove. It's the last poem in the section of iLearn. My father's eyes pool behind rose-colored glasses. Your mother did not love me. On a bench off the bank of the Fox, the sun sets like a cliche, highest in pinks and purples, some gray. She did not love me, he says, and goes on, tears purling on his cheeks. And I learn what love isn't. I learn where to go when I am lonely, this river edge, these rocks, how to wrap memories in newspaper and keep them in a box. I'm going to read one poem from the section iTeach, which is the second section of the book. I'm going to read a poem based on a middle schooler. It's called Learning Figurative Language. His small hands hold pencil and penguin eraser. Adolescent, pubescent, intelligent eyes may analyze similes. A taco is like personification, Kevin. Rhyme, he came from heaven. Metaphor is an ocean he drowns in, makes him feel dumb as a donkey. Hyperbole, touch his shoulder, tell him he is a lion or an elephant or an owl, so he never forgets how amazing he is.
Wow. To you, how important is accessibility of your poetry? And I guess my question is, before you continue, should one have to work hard to solve the poem? That's the question.
Oh, I was thinking more like accessibility. On my second chapbook is actually going to be an audio as well. So I just wanted to note that real quick.
All right, great.
But as
great.
far as understanding a poem, I feel there should be minimal work on the reader's end. Well, it depends on depends on the poem, depends on the poet.
Okay. All right.
I do enjoy a good puzzling poem. I do enjoy a poem that you need to read more than once in order to understand it, or a poem that you may need to look something up to understand it better. It all depends, too, on the relationship of the actual writer in the poem. Some writers want people to get one meaning out of it and one meaning only, and I just can't agree with that. I like when people read my poetry and find themselves in it or find something completely different than what I meant. So as far as accessibility goes, I don't believe in the idea of like a reader needing to have to look up every single word to understand a poem.
Right.
But at the same time, maybe if there's one or two words that they need to look up, that's okay. Do some research.
I agree. It's okay. It's okay. You shared that you plan to include an audio. Well, here's my question. All right. What is the relationship between your speaking voice and your written voice? If there's a relationship.
There's no connection.
Tell me more. Talk to me. Tell me.
There's, I feel that I definitely write better than I speak. I write more elegantly. When I speak, it can come out as garble jarble. And I also, I use incorrect words, and I'm an English teacher, and people are always like watching how they speak around me. I'm like, don't do that. I don't say everything correctly, and I punctuate myself correctly when I'm speaking. And also, and I say y'all, I say ain't, but sometimes my y'alls and ain't sneak into my poems. Depends on the voice of the poem, and my Wisconsinite accent and things that I say sneak in at times. But so maybe there is a connection. There's a connection.
Well, okay. You said that you plan to include an audio, right? So that's going to be your voice. Unless you're going to have someone else do it. Excuse me?
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is true. Yeah. And the way, I guess, if we're talking spoken word as far as a connection, there's definitely, some of my poems need to be spoken.
Okay.
Like when they're read, they don't read the same as when you say it out loud.
Yes. My poetry's like that. Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. Well, personally, I've enjoyed listening to you, and I've understood every word. So I think you got what it takes. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to you. You can do it. You can do it. Here we go. Next question. As you think about your body of work, has a poem ever humbled or frightened
you? I'll just consider that for a moment.
Yes.
Well, I've had poems certainly frighten me. Poems that I've written on very personal topics.
Yes.
One I will not say. The other one I will bring up awareness. I've written poems on, I was in a sexually abusive relationship, and the poems that have come out of, like, that pain, I can't even put them out into the world. They're too scary to me. And there's other topics that I touch on them. I do write about them, but maybe when I'm 80, we'll
I guess my next question is a poem letting your guard down or building a wall?
Depends on the person. Some people live in poetry behind a persona.
All right.
And I met this one poet who came to my creative writing class, poetry class, when I was in college, and he said there should never be an I in a poem. That you should not be in your poetry. It should be about other things. And that greatly offended me.
Well, it offends me. Just listening.
It's discrediting thousands of poets. And I thought with his poetry, he was building a wall. He was building a wall of biblical characters, and he was building a wall for himself. But for a variety, many, many, many poets, it is a breaking down of walls. It is a becoming open to the world and exposing yourself in ways that really nothing else can.
Let's go back to the gentleman who said that you should not include I. Now, when I think about your poetry, from what I've heard so far, there's a lot of emotion in it. Whether you're discussing or sharing about nature or your own personal experiences. Do you think someone can be called a poet if they don't feel strong emotions?
I didn't call myself a poet for a very long time.
Okay.
So if you're calling yourself a poet, I feel takes time and is given to you based on experiences. So rounding back to the question though,
As I said, poetry is play.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're playing and you're not giving emotions to your readers or yourself, that's fine. I mean, you can still call yourself a poet. You're playing with language. You're having a good time. But can you call it a poem? Does a poem have to have emotion?
Right.
That it does. That I feel it does. A poem should evoke something. It should evoke humor, which I don't do very well.
All right, that's right. We know that. You don't do humor very well.
It could evoke sadness. It could evoke a smile, happiness. You know, it needs to evoke strong emotion for it to be a poem. But to be a poet, you just got to play with language.
Please share 2 more poems.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and share from iLearn, iTeach, the iTeach section. So this is about my students. And let me see. I'm trying to decide. You know what? I'll read this. My zombies. My zombies. My creativity consumed by my students. Like worms, they work their way into my skull as I try to mull over their ways. In a daze, they sit for days on end without answers. What was said? What was said? Scoop my brain out with their ladles. Our zombies are so very active, attractive even, with their shiny Jordans and long polished nails. If only they had purpose, meaning beyond their own images, selfies and video chats, looking in their mirrors without reflection. And that's all for that.
Wow,
all right,
that's deep.
That one, a teacher friend totally, she loves those final 2 lines, the selfies and video chats, looking in their mirrors without reflection.
That's very powerful.
You see it all the time.
I'm sure.
You see all the time with those little boys. All right, second poem, Journals. I read all your journals, every dang one, all 76. And let me tell you, some of you are stupid as bond glass, but most of you know more than you let on. Tell me again what love means, and trust and honesty, how your words are slick with poetry and wisdom beyond your youth. Tell me about that time your friends deserted you and all you had was God. Tell me your secrets and I will hold them forever.
Wow. Beautiful.
Thank you.
It also sounds like, from listening to your work, that you enjoy teaching. I know it's tough, but that you overall enjoy it. Am I correct?
Well, yes. I love teaching. My full-time job right now doesn't require teaching. It still requires education, but not teaching directly. Yes. But I still teach part-time. I teach high school equivalency to adults.
Wow.
I can't imagine life without teaching.
All right, it's beautiful. I like that. You also mentioned earlier that you initially didn't view yourself as a poet, or you wouldn't use that label, being a poet. And I want to know whether you used the label or not. Do you think you were meant to be? I can't say poet. Yes, I can. Do you think you were meant to be a poet? Even though we can't use the word. Do you think you were meant to be a poet?
I'm not sure about the idea of meant or destined or.
Okay.
I feel, as I said earlier, anybody can be a poet if they play.
Yes.
So, actually, funny thing, it reminds me of a poem I actually published in So I Can Write called To Be a Poet.
All right.
And it kind
You're going to share it with
us? Yeah, it kind of explains my idea of why I didn't feel like a poet at that time.
I'd love to hear it.
To be a poet, sometimes I wonder if I am not old enough to write poetry, that I have to lose a parent as a rite of poet passage, or walk across the state of New Jersey without sleeping and only a canteen of water in hand, or lose an arm, an ear, my mind. How many years until I am a poet? How many letters away? Have I experienced enough joy, enough pain? Or should I buy a boat and sail across the Pacific for 3 years, eating barracuda and bonnethead sharks? Should I chase tornadoes? I should stop asking questions. Look, listen to the world just outside my window, right next to my bedside table. Hear the minutes passing by me, as mundane as a caterpillar crouched on the grass, and spindle it into white gold.
Wow. You've got to read that one again. Yeah. I need to encore. Please read it again. I like that one. I like that one. Please read it again.
Yes. It has some humor in it, or I'm trying to be funny at least.
That's all right.
To be a poet. Sometimes I wonder if I am not old enough to write poetry, that I have to lose a parent as a rite of poet passage, or walk across the state of New Jersey without sleeping and only a canteen of water in hand, or lose an arm, ear, my mind. How many years until I am a poet? How many letters away? Have I experienced enough joy, enough pain? Or should I buy a boat and sail across the Pacific for 3 years, eating barracuda and bonnethead sharks? Should I chase tornadoes? I should stop asking questions. Look, listen to the world just outside my window, right next to my bedside table. Hear the minutes passing by me, as mundane as a caterpillar crouched in the grass, and spindle it into white gold. And that's all for that one.
Wow. I guess the line that struck me the most, they all were exquisite, was just the one about, have I experienced enough joy, and I'm paraphrasing, enough pain. That one,
yes.
That's huge for a lot of people to think about. That's just, that just touched me. That really, really did. I think on that note, let's take a brief break, and we'll be right back. All right. We are back. I am here with Kathrine Yets. Wow, Kathrine. What I'd like to know, because we both know that you are a poet. If you don't claim it, I will. You are a poet. So what I'd like to know is, what surprises you most about being a poet?
What surprises me most is that people actually like what I write.
Okay. All right.
I didn't expect that. People enjoy my work, and I just thought, these are for me when I first started writing. And when I first started writing, I shared a lot. Like I said, going on the stairs and sharing the 9/10. And going and sharing poems with my sister. And then for a long time, it was very personal. It was very,
yes,
this is for me, and I don't know if I can share this. And then once I started sharing, I'll never forget, in high school creative writing class, sharing a poem, and at the end, my good friend Ben Schoolcraft was like, that should be published. And I was like, oh, wow. I felt so important. You know, I felt like I could do this. And yeah, so I think that's what surprises me the most is like the connections too. The connections where you read a poem and you think, oh, nobody's experienced this, and there's people who have.
Yes.
Like having a mother who has bipolar and having this and that happen, and the connections it creates was wonderful.
Yes, it's true. Poetry normalizes situations that you don't feel alone. Here's a fun question. Just to, I don't know. Here's a fun question. If you were a poet during a different era, where would you want to exist?
Oh, goodness.
With all you know about the world, the good, bad, and ugly, what era would you want to live in?
Probably first wave feminism.
Say that one more time.
First wave feminism. During the first wave of feminism.
Oh, wow. First wave feminism.
Yeah.
Wow. I've never heard that answer before. Tell me more. Tell me all about it.
I'd want, because I feel a lot of my poems are a little too late. You know what I mean? Like, they're talking about women's rights. Some people are like, oh, well, that's long past. No, we have rights now, which is not true. But it's very woman power, some of my poetry, and very some are very sex-driven, I'm not going to lie to you. They're sensual, sex-driven poetry where I feel like now that's kind of old hat. It's like, okay, that's been done. Whereas during first wave feminism, that was a big deal to talk about sex. It was a taboo topic before. And then all of a sudden it's like we're just, able to share it, and it's now it's just like, okay, whatever, you shared it. So I wanted to be in a time where it's like, wow, I can't believe you're saying that.
Okay. All right. So to what extent, and precisely, is any poem a woman's or a man's?
Can you repeat that question?
Yes. To what extent is any poem a woman's or a man's? You talk about women's empowerment.
So a poem belonging to a gender. I feel that poetry belongs to all genders, not men, women, genderqueer, or trans, because a poem can be written by a very male perspective, and women can still read it and be in that perspective. Or from a trans person's perspective, we go into that perspective. As I said before, poetry teaches and creates change. So you step outside of yourself. So I feel all poetry is meant for all genders.
All right. You know what I'm going to do since you answered that question? I'm going to add to what extent, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, to what extent is any poem a woman's or a trans person or a man's? How does that sound? What should I put there?
Extent?
Right, it's just not woman or man. I mean, there's so much in between.
Right, right.
Teach me in this moment.
Genderqueer, non-binary, transgender, F to M to F. I feel, obviously some poems that I write speak more towards women, but I'm not leaving anyone out.
Yes, that's so important. I'm realizing that now. That is so important. You've taught me so much in less than an hour. You are a teacher. You're a poet and a teacher. And I'm going to change my way of being as a consequence of that. Share another poem.
Do you mind if I share two?
No, please. I'm enjoying this. Please.
They're kind of they're attached to each other, I would say. The first one is called Resignation, as published in Her Story. It all comes down to an email. You're not welcome back without a letter explaining your illness. You're not welcome back without opening up your skull and showing them your dopamine doesn't flow just right, and how someone stuck a sizzling iron to your hopes and dreams, swirling it around until it's soup. You cannot show them a simple sickness. You cannot show them the path from your mental health to physical, because, sweetheart, it's all in your head, and they could care less. Unless you figure out how to put your words and thoughts under your skin like blisters or a rash that would cover your whole body like constellations, uncovering your destructive ideation, still they would not understand how scary it can be to leave the bedroom or how hard it can be to lift your head. You can't quite put your finger on it. Your every thought a scuttling spider. Explain to them this metaphor, and what then? Your resignation, your death certificate, your only hope for a normal life imploded by a signature, signing off your sanity. In the midst of your best self, you lost yourself once again, despite cutting off your own ears to ignore the whisper of desperation that you're not okay. You're not okay. And the next one's closely connected. It's about my students. Love was not enough. You hug me and my heart sings the Pokemon theme song, taking me back to my own childhood and how I longed for an adult to love me like a child should be. I love you all like a morning dove, cooing late noon outside my patio door, like a lily opening fresh on my kitchen table. I loved you so much I had to leave you so you could grow big and strong and smart. You were my world. I woke up waiting to see you, but I also spent days in bed worrying that I was not enough for you, that my love was not enough to show you how special you are. That one's hard to read without crying.
That's all right. That's all right. That's all right.
Okay.
Tears are good. All right. And I want to know, if you could tell your younger writing self anything, what would it be?
To not be afraid and to not think, what would other people think about this? To write without fear, or to feel the fear and do it anyway.
You know, it kind of brings up this next question, and we've already framed it. So, but I want to say it. I just want to say it. Writers and poets write for a myriad of reasons. Some write primarily to speak a message to their audience. Others write because to stay silent is not an option. In a nutshell, why do you write, Kathrine?
I write not only to heal myself, but to hopefully heal others, or to inspire, to create change, to teach, to open up different avenues. I feel I can't not write.
All right.
Even if it wasn't ever read.
Okay.
Although that would be very sad. I feel I would still write even if nobody read it.
All right. Okay. And you should. You know, we're almost at the end of our poetic journey together, but I would like to hear one more poem, if you don't mind. Just one more. To take us away from here.
All right. This poem is a spoken word. It is not published anywhere. It is in a possible future collection, though, called Stars. The intimacy of the stars can be auctioned off. Tony Gardner. We sold the stars, every last one, in order to pay for our place in the universe. Between cheers and beers and wine and dine, we take each other for granted. We take and take and take and fill ourselves with lattes to fill the voids within. When really, honey, we need poetry. We need an explosion of fuchsia, apricot, crimson, cobalt to ignite fireworks under our feet. We need the river. We need the maple and oak trees. We need the pain, the passions, to be smacked by a muse so hard we cannot stop seeing all the beauty in the world, and words pour from our mouths as we found the fountain of youth within our voices. Let your body move and jive and jiggle to the joy of the beats of your tongue, the syllables like gold in your mouth. Let it loose. Oh, as a wolf, and laugh, and let loose the sounds that have been buried within yourself. Discard your jewels because, honey, your words are the real sapphires and rubies that start fires when jumbled together and jingle with the tongue's tingle to let out our screams, our sighs, our cries, our laughter out so loud it can make kingdoms fall and damn or salvage souls. We be powerful beings. We are powerful. That's all.
Wow. Oh, to me, with that particular poem, you truly came alive. And I've always believed, in terms of spoken word, that when you share a poem, you need to live it, to live that experience out loud. If you wrote it, live it. All right, that was beautiful. Great way to end. Kathrine, you've written more than one book. What piece of advice would you give to your readers?
A piece of advice?
Yes.
Never stop writing. Never stop writing. Whether you are comfortable, uncomfortable, wherever you are, let it out. Let it loose.
I like that. Oh, all right. Where can listeners find your work, Kathrine?
All my chapbooks are available on Amazon, so I can write The Animal Within, as well as iLearn, iTeach. Otherwise, you can get them from the press. I prefer to get it from the press. Unsolicited Press and Cyberwit has my other two. Also, if you just Google me, you can find a variety of literary magazines that I've been published in. So, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram, author Kathrine Yets.
All right. That was going to be my next question. How can listeners stay in touch? So your Facebook again is what? Say it one more time.
Author Kathrine Yets, and that's
okay.
Kathrine. No E before the R in Kathrine.
All right. All right. Last thing before we go. What is in the works for you next? Where do you go from here with your writing?
Well, I have about 3 more chapbooks and 3 more full-length collections under my belt that are just looking for a home.
Wow.
I keep putting them together. I just can't stop. And finding different themes in my works and things like that. I just plan to keep on writing, keep on keeping on, keep on trying to get it out there if I can. And so I will be at different readings. I'm trying to do a lot more readings and book launches. And it's the year of yes. COVID isn't as bad. It's still bad, but it's not as bad. So people are getting together now finally. So it's the year of saying yes to being able to.
Wow. I am so excited for you. To me, you're like a poetic star on the rise.
Oh,
that's how I feel. That's how I feel.
Oh.
Your voice is so strong. Don't deny your voice. Don't deny your voice, whether you want to write whatever kind of poetry that you want to write, whether it's humorous poetry, like I said earlier, just do it. Just live it. Just live it.
Live it.
I want to thank you so much, Kathrine, for joining me. I've truly enjoyed this hour. You're the best. You're the best.
This was really fun. This was so much fun. And when do you get to talk about poetry in life? It's just not enough.
It's not enough. You're right. So, again, thank you. I want to thank our listening audience for tuning in. That's it. And as I share every time I'm on this program, let poetry ring somewhere throughout the land. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you. All right, Kathrine, be good. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Quintessential Listening, Poetry Online Radio, is available on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. You can also check out the website at qlpor.com.